Welcome to Bloody Manor, the residence you may not escape from. You might want to be careful what door you're opening, because it might just be your last. Enjoy the conversation. Enjoy the story. But if you don't make it out, don't blame me. Anyway, I'll see you real soon.
And by real soon, I mean right about now. What is up, everybody? How's everybody doing? Welcome to another episode of Bloody Manor. And this week, we are talking about one of my favorite franchises, and I'm guessing the panelists' favorite franchise. Maybe not their favorite franchise, but maybe one of them. I would honor to say maybe one of my top 10 franchises. And that is, of course, the Scream franchise. So everybody can go ahead and start chiming in. Let's go ahead and introduce everybody real quick. Of course, we have Matty G, as he's been donned the name on the show. You've been on Bloody Matter before. How does it feel to be back? Even though you've never left, remember you signed your soul over to me forever because you're now a part of this. This is part of your contract, and you will not be able to leave.
Well, I'm still hanging here. I mean, apparently you opened the door and let me out tonight. That was always friendly. To be honest, I love Scream. That was one of the first horror franchises that really stuck to me as a kid. So I love it. I can't wait to keep talking about it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And we have somebody new to the manor. You, of course, signed your wife away to this manor as well. You are now forever here and can never leave. That's part of the contract of being part of the show. So thank you very much for signing your life away to me. Yeah, Kelsey, how are you doing tonight? I hope that the Call to Action Army won't miss you. I mean, you'll be trapped in this house. I mean, you can probably attract them over to the show too, and then we'll just get the whole thing and we'll just merge it together and we'll have one big happy family of ghosts.
Honestly, they probably won't miss me, so you're probably fine.
Okay. So are you excited to talk about Scream? I know that you are actually probably one of the members of this panel to have just seen Scream. So that's why I was like, let me get you on the panel because I like people that just see franchises and it's really fresh in their mind.
Yep, I just binged it a week or two ago, all 4 movies in 2 days. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about it.
Nice. As always, we have Alec. Alec, this is your second time on the show. Since it, are you ready to talk about Scream? Are you excited to, well, you're not back. I mean, you never left. Are you feeling good to stretch your legs outside of the manor?
Yes, I was supposed to come out I think last weekend for Nightmare on Elm Street, and I didn't quite be able to get out, but I'm finally able to stretch my legs a little bit, walk around the Bloody Manor, and talk about Scream. I'm really excited.
Absolutely. And another movie we've been able to attract to the manor with the lustrous amount of snacks that we have planted. There's not really snacks here, guys. Sorry, I lied. I just wanted to get your soul and take it and put it in the manor. So anyway, Aaron, how are you doing? Are you excited to talk about Scream? Excited to sell your soul away to me to talk about horror movies whenever I need it?
Yeah, a lot less excited than before the promise was made, but that's okay. I kind of like this movie franchise, so let's talk about it. And blood's down, so let's go. It's signed.
Absolutely, I loved it. He just gave us a Stanley signature, so I really like that. That's a throwback to when we talked about it. Guys, we are going to talk about Scream first. Obviously, we're going to talk about the granddaddy of all Screams, and that's Scream. This movie kicked off what I would say 9-year-old Doug's little heart when he sat in the theater for the first time and watched a horror movie with a person that shouldn't have let him watch that movie, probably. I'm just saying, I probably shouldn't have watched that movie at 9, but I was watching Leprechaun 3 when I was 6, so I was okay. Guys, I'm going to go to Matt first. Matt, tell me, I guess, what's your experience with Scream? The first movie, what you thought about it?
The first movie, honestly, took what the 80s, 70s, 80s slasher films did and completely turned it on its head. The whole time, the killer is out there, but unlike Jason or Freddy or what have you, you don't know who he is. He shows up and then he disappears. And spoiler, turns out to be her boyfriend. You know, the whole movie took the serial killer and turned it on its head. It in the entire subgenre of slasher films. So
Jeez, Matt, you're spoiling things from 23 years ago. Why would you do that? Why would you spoil things from 23 years ago?
Because I can, goddammit. Question to the panel: what year did Scream come out? I'm trying to figure it out. I don't remember.
96. I just looked it up.
So 96. So I was
9 years old at the time when I saw it.
I was 8 or 9, depending on what part of the year it came out. I remember my mom going to the video store, and she's like, "This might be scary. I don't know." And we sat down one day, I mind you, and watched it, and it just triggered something. Because in '94, she showed me Brain Scan, which is kind of a horror movie. It's a horror-esque movie, and it just grew. I mean, I wasn't Doug here, you know, who saw it at 3, but I was pretty close. So I fucking love Scream.
That says back.
I mean,
we'll talk about it.
I mean, I just showed Little Warrior these about 6 months ago, and he was riveted. He loved it, and it's just so being able to share the thrill that I got from Scream with him just makes it come full circle.
Absolutely. Kelsey, you're a newbie, so you just saw these about 2 weeks ago. We're all gonna just sit like this and listen to you talk about things because we're
I remember that. It was so long ago.
So fond memories of watching Scream for the first time. Tell us what you thought. And why do you think it took you so long to watch these movies?
All right. Well, I'll start with why it took me so long. For some reason, my parents would not let me watch slasher movies as a kid. However, I saw Starship Troopers when I was like 7, so I don't understand why I wasn't allowed to see Scream. So I was not allowed. And then as an adult, I just didn't get around to seeing it. I tend to not like to watch scary movies by myself, and no one wanted to watch with me. So finally, I was just like, okay, it's time. It's Halloween time. I need to watch these movies. They were talking about them in like a group chat I was in. I'm like, I haven't seen these movies. So I started watching them. I had not had the ending spoiled for me, so that was great. So I did not see it coming. People were laughing at me because I was in the chat, like freaking out. I'm like, oh my gosh, I did not see that coming.
No, it was an actually really good twist. I don't want to get into like doing the plot points. I want to talk to each person first before we get into the plot points. But overall, what did you think of the series, like of the first movie?
Mm-hmm. I love that it knows what it is. It's very self-aware. I like that it's humorous, which is great because when you're dealing with so much like horror and trauma, you need the levity to like kind of like reset you for the next kill, if that makes sense. Like, okay, that was intense. Oh, okay, I'm gonna get distracted for a little bit. Oh, wait, now what's happening? So I just like that it's like an up and down of emotions throughout the whole entire thing.
I mean, that, and you get a Freddy Krueger cameo. What can go wrong with that? And the Fonz talking to Freddy Krueger. Who thought that would be possible? Alec, your thoughts on the first movie? What did how old were you when you saw it? So on and so forth.
All right. So my experience of Scream, my first experience is actually, I was late. I'm late to the horror game. I didn't really start getting into horror until about like 7 years ago, maybe. So I'm new to this. So when Scream was out, I kind of fell to the wayside. But I was a huge comedy guy, and I was all into the scary movies, Scary Movie 1, 2, and 3, and all that. And Scary Movie 1 was my honestly got my first exposure to Scream. And then I was like, what the hell is this based off of? And I watched Scream, and I mean, all the little Easter eggs that are in, even though it's mostly Scream 2 that's in Scary Movie, but you still have Ghostface, you have all the great humor. And then when I watch Scream 1, you still get that, like, not the same type of humor, but you still get the humor, you get the levity, but then you also get the really intense kills. I think they're really fantastic kills, actually. And like as mentioned earlier, the twist is crazy. It's a great twist.
Uncle JJ's got a game for you. Uncle JJ's got a game for you.
Yeah.
So, Aaron.
That's not creepy.
Listen, if you watch Scary Movie 2, you'll know exactly what that scene's about. And it's actually really kind of creepy. It's super creepy. No, I don't want to get into that movie. We'll talk about horror comedies one point at Bloody Manor, and then I'll have Alec back on. Aaron, Scream 1, thoughts when you saw it?
Yeah, so I'd like to answer the first time question a little differently, because there's the first time I saw it as a kid, and there's the first time I saw it as like an adult who's seen actual movies and could understand the subtext. So the first time seeing it as a kid, I was 7 years old. I thought it was this crazy, scary movie. Like, I didn't really even notice like them talking about rules of horror movies. I had never seen Halloween, the first Halloween. So like, I didn't get all of that stuff. The twist was obviously crazy to me. That being more than one killer was really nuts. And then we'll talk about that as we go here. And then the second time me seeing it was my freshman year at college. And I'd say that was the time where I really realized this wasn't just like a good horror movie. This was a film classic. This isn't a horror classic. This is a classic that I think everybody who is into watching movies needs to watch as a foundational piece of their movie going experience. So I really could talk. I'm glad to be here to get to talk about this tonight with you guys. But yeah, I loved it for very different reasons each time. Now I don't consider it a scary movie at all. I mean, I'm not trying to be a tough guy, but even if it was the first time I saw it, like I would not, but it also wouldn't be like, that's a horror comedy. But I would like, it's just done so perfectly. And the time it came out and everything was a time that the horror genre, I mean, I guess needed to be kind of, to coin Matt's phrase, flipped on its head a little bit. It had gone really stale. And people didn't take, and this was just the shot it needed. But I loved it the first time. My mom took me to it. She was fully aware it was a horror movie. My mom let me watch whatever I wanted as a kid. I turned out just fucked up enough, so like, it's all good. Like, I went as Ghostface as a 7-year-old, which hilarious pictures. Had a super awesome knife. I mean, the cloak. Being in Michigan, it kept me warm for that Halloween. So that was when Halloweens used to be cold back in the day. That's how old I am. Halloween used to be cold. Now it's
I'm old enough to where we used to have falls.
Yeah, where the mask was like part of the warmth plan when you were making your Halloween costume.
Right?
You're like, well,
now it's like you don't want a mask at all because
mask off.
Sweat. You can't even wear makeup anymore because sweat.
But either way, I loved it for just
I don't know
such
what the fuck
different
y'all are
reasons.
talking about.
Both times. Good.
Can somebody explain to me what fall is? Because we go from summer to cold in Arizona.
Yeah, Arizona here. We're loving Arizona humor. You gonna throw some Texas humor in there too?
Well, no. In Texas, we get all hot for 10 months, and then you get like 2 months, maybe 3, but usually there's not very much cold, and the cold is like 50.
You want to know what we get in the armpit in New Jersey? All weather. Every day of the week. There is no weather. We are every season. You could have spring one day, fall the next, and then winter the third, and then summer the next. Literally, or even in one day, we can have all four. It's not irrational at all. We're called the armpit of the world because of that reason.
No arguments.
No arguments.
No arguments. Let's actually break this movie down. This movie turned the whodunit into kind of a self-aware movie. It was making fun of itself. It's what Wes Craven wanted to do with New Nightmare, and he did it successfully in this movie. And I would say successfully in 2 out of the 3 sequels. We'll talk about one of those later. We'll talk about the one that I think dun.
Let's just be a happy family for this.
We're gonna be a happy family for this movie because this movie, in my opinion, is the best in the franchise because it was the first. And not even just because it was the first, it was so well done. It took the whole mantra of mocking itself with giving you the rules right off the bat, and then they say it again in the movie because you're not paying attention enough. The 3 rules: no sex, no drugs, and definitely don't say "I'll be right back." Even though here's the thing. Here's the thing. Can we talk about for a second how why am I blanking on his name? Yeah,
Randy.
Randy. All right, there you go. How Randy basically predicts his death. That he gets a knife in the stomach. That's not exactly how he dies, but that's pretty much borderline to how he starts to die.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll see you in the kitchen with a knife later. I'm like, I didn't catch that the first 100 times I watched it. And then
No.
out of nowhere. And it's like, what? Okay. But let's actually kick this off at the beginning. You get Drew Barrymore, and I was mistaken because they actually do say his last name. Stephen, I'm going to get it right now. Stephen Orth. So Hunter, if you're watching, I was wrong. You were right. Congratulations, you get a point. So you get this whole scene with Casey and Steven. Drew Barrymore performs this ridiculously well. You don't see Drew Barrymore as a guest. You don't. She's either in the movie or she's not. In my opinion, I've never really seen her as a guest. Even in Whip It, she was kind of still a mainstay character in Whip It. But go over this first scene, Matt. Let's actually start in reverse. Aaron, first scene when we get Casey and we get Steven and the first call.
Yeah. So right off the bat, as when I saw it as a kid, I didn't know who Drew Barrymore was. So the whole like her being a star part of it and me being like, oh, this is like a star, that was not in it to me. It was just a blonde actress as a 7-year-old watching it. But the cool part about that scene is it was right away introducing you to a world where horror movies were aware of other horror movies that came before it. And now that's just like in half the horror movies that probably come out now, they will make references to like The Exorcist or something, but that wasn't being done before this movie. So now right off the bat, by having it start with the horror trivia on the patio with her and like her saying like the classic, like, oh, I love horror movies. It's like, oh, really? And like, then she, like, no, she didn't, like, at all.
That out for you.
And like, it's like Kevin Williamson, the writer, doesn't get enough love. This is Wes Craven's creation, but Kevin Williamson is an ingredient that when it's taken away in the later movies, takes away from my enjoyment of the movies.
You definitely notice it right off the bat.
And Kevin Williamson probably just has, as a horror guy, and Wes Craven have for years heard people go, oh, I love horror movies. And then they don't, it's like, oh, really? And this is before the internet. This is before fanboy, culture really has taken over. So like watching it through the lens of 2019 eyes, which I'll let Kelsey talk about since she was able to do it. She'll probably be able to maybe talk about that more. That this movie wasn't made in 2019. This movie was made in 1996, and to be tackling it the way it was, but the tension, the use of the popcorn on the stove, being a way of like telling
Pop anymore. Even in '96, who was making Jiffy Pop?
I agree, but but go ahead and pull up the sales for Jiffy Pop the next year. Guarantee it's shot up. Yeah, shut up. Everybody's like, let's watch a horror movie and get some Jiffy Pop. This sucks. Why did we get Jiffy Pop? Like, yeah. Enough about popcorn talk. That was not only a way. It was background noise. It was a way of disorienting the audience. It was a way of disorienting her at a certain point. And then this is when cell phones were a superpower in movies. So to have a mobile killer who could use a cell phone, that was like, what? Oh my God! Like cell phones have, in a lot of ways, ruined a lot of horror aspects, and they trip over their feet to find ways to take the cell phone out of the equation by being in a place with no data or so, but either way, this is when a cell phone was like a superpower and it was just like, think about somebody with a knife and then just right away, brutal kill of both the boyfriend and and Drew and the parents coming home and Scream entering with a scream. So yeah, and we never see those parents again. I mean,
No, they're
fuck 'em.
nowhere to be found.
Fuck
Bye.
'em. Yeah.
You
Bye.
are out.
Goodbye,
We see them
Felicia.
We see them in Scary Movie 1.
Correct. But, yeah.
Alec, thoughts on the first scene, the brutalness of it, because that first death was definitely brutal. Even with a self-aware horror movie, this was a brutal first death.
Yeah.
Actually brutal 2 deaths, because both those deaths are gruesome. Your thoughts?
So I did watch it when I didn't know who Drew Barrymore was. So and not knowing what was gonna happen. So seeing her in there and just seeing her getting taken out the way she does, like it's watching it now, you realize you're like, God damn, like they did that to Drew Barrymore. But it's a brutal kill. I think a lot of these kills in here there are a couple of these kills that are kind of brutal throughout the series.
There are also a couple that aren't possible. Don't try to roll somebody up in a fucking garage door. It doesn't work, people. The person could weigh 100 pounds, and that's still too much for a garage door. But I give him benefits for that.
It was reinforced. It was a reinforced garage door.
Inventive. I don't care if it's reinforced or not. 100 pounds is bringing that bitch down.
That was terrifying as a 7-year-old.
Yeah,
watch that. 7-year-olds don't understand physics.
Yeah,
Holy shit, the head getting crushed. I was screaming at that point. I was so scared. And then watching it as an 18-year-old, I laughed my ass off.
I was dead when I watched it as an adult. When I saw it as a kid, I was like, that can happen.
Oh my god. Yeah. I never fucked with her garage. I felt the same way. Fuck the garage.
I'm sorry for interrupting you, Alec. Back to the first scene.
It's also that terrifying feeling of like you put yourself in that position of getting a phone call and someone telling you that they're watching you, that they're in the house. Like that's fucking terrifying. That's something that I would never want to happen to me. And I think that Wes Craven does that scene perfectly. It really puts you into the movie, letting you know like what you're gonna get into when you're going into this movie. But showing you some really nice, like I don't know, it's just a really good scene that just really ties you into it really brings you into the movie and gets you sunk in, I think.
Absolutely. Kelsey, through your 2019 eyes,
did you laugh at that scene?
First scene, because I definitely am curious because you did get to see it this year, and it's kind of like 23 years after the fact. How did it hit you? I mean, you obviously know who Drew Barrymore is. So
I know who Drew Barrymore is, and that's actually the only
You've never gotten anything about Drew Barrymore, I'm sure. I thought we were hosting with Drew Barrymore tonight. I'm sorry, I'm done.
Yeah, she's tied up in my other room. Sorry.
No, I just meant that Kelsey looked like her. That's all.
Well, thank you.
No problem. Sorry.
That's he's kidnapping people on the internet. Listen, FBI, if you're listening, we had nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it.
He was acting on his own accord.
He was acting on his own
I
accord.
was just trying to be nice.
Sorry. 2000. Let's talk about the 2019 eyes.
Okay.
And seeing the viewpoint from a person that's just seen it this year.
All right. Well, that scene is the only scene I knew about from Scream because I'd heard that, oh yeah, it's a movie that Drew Barrymore gets killed in like the first, few minutes of. And so I was kind of braced for it. I'm like, okay, this is gonna be pretty brutal. I'm ready for it. I know it's gonna happen. But they did a good job of teasing it for a long time. You're like, oh gosh, here it is. And then it just keeps going with the conversation. And it's like, okay, we're still going. And then when it finally did happen, I'm like, I was not expecting it to happen in the way it happened. I just pictured dead, not the slow, her getting away again and then ending up the way she does. So it was pretty great, especially even though I had expectations, it still exceeded my expectations. And back to like the 2019 eyes, this Scream didn't feel dated to me at all. Like, even though it came out so long ago, I didn't feel like I was watching an old movie. Like, I didn't be like, oh, that wouldn't happen anymore. I was so absorbed in it. I didn't feel the time difference, if that makes sense.
Yeah, nice. And one other thing like that I was thinking about with Drew Barrymore that was really cool about this movie is that she's like in all the advertisements for it. And like she's like front and center in all the advertisements. No one knew who Nev Campbell was.
She's
like,
the poster.
Yeah, she's the poster. She's like in. I was just looking at the poster, and she's bolded it, and like it's just that is something that it can sometimes be done now, but it's usually like also in the movie starring, and you're like, oh, there's like a cameo from Bruce Willis or something. But like this. Yeah. But I was just thinking about how that just probably, especially if I was watching trailers more back then and like seeing movie posters and like registering like that to set up that expectation, and she's gone in 5 minutes. But I just wanted to think about that. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. And Star Drew wants to say hey to me and Matt. Hi, Star Drew. How you doing, good sir?
Hey, Star Drew. Hey, Star Drew. Thanks for the.
Yeah, thanks for saying hi to everybody.
Hey, everybody.
There, everybody. Hi. We're all in here.
We're all here.
Whatever, Star Drew.
No, but we're really excited. We're talking about the Scream franchise, guys. If you just stepped in, going over it's for me a lot of like modern takes on movies aren't the way that they used to take on them either. So it's like with the promotional stuff, it's not the same. You got to kind of tell the story. You kind of do everything in order to get people intrigued into watching your movies. With this, I don't think there was much that they gave away in the trailer, if I'm not mistaken. I think they maybe started with the phone call and then gave you a little bit of glimpse of other things, but like not really anything special. And Star Drew says, sorry, I don't know everybody. But
I'm just busting your
now
balls.
you know us.
And says,
you can see we're here.
But Matt, to you, good sir, your impressions of the first scene and the first two deaths.
The first scene, the opening itself, and the fact she knows the trivia. Like most of the time, they are completely off, but she is hitting everything. And we go back to the Jiffy Pop. I actually like that they're using the Jiffy Pop because it gives you a time, how long the scene's actually building out. Because Jiffy Pop, if you remember correctly, it took a while to pop. I mean, once it started going, it was, fairly quick. But it gives you that kind of time lapse of how long he's actually playing with her. And spoiler, we know that they're both there. Both of them are. Yeah, Drew Barrymore is definitely jaw dropping. She is. I was in love with her at this scene.
Let me read that for you real quick. Off Drew Barrymore that fast was jaw dropping.
Hey, yeah, dude, she's not bad in Home Price.
I'll agree with you. Drew Barrymore is quite attractive, but they were talking about killing her off pretty quick.
Well, it's still either way. And I like the end of it after he stabs her multiple times, and she can see that help is coming. Her parents are on their way home. And she's just inches from getting there. And you could feel the tension. She's pretty much dead. But you could feel the tension rising as she's crawling towards them. So just that opening scene is still terrifying because it kind of reminds me of something that I heard in Phone Booth. A ringing phone has to be answered. And if she hadn't answered... And if she hadn't answered that phone, there's a possibility that they wouldn't have attacked her.
That's not true. The plan was to attack her from the get-go.
But they couldn't have toyed with her.
Her dead.
The point was to toy with her first, They wanted to feel that rush that they get in a horror movie. So they may have probably still offed her, but the point of it was them fucking with her beforehand.
Oh, no, I get that, but it's a script, so it was bound to happen anyway.
Anyway, but it was brutal. Like those deaths in the first 5-10 minutes was just shockingly brutal.
Yeah, no, I mean they basically gut Steve in a lawn chair and then they gut her and hang her from a tree. There's not much more brutal that you can get with a human body. I guess
Jodi Arias might say otherwise.
one down the line later, but not really. But let's move on from here and move on to the next day when the everybody shows up. We're gonna kind of focus more on the killings and the chasings, the main focal points of the movies. So we go the next day. School basically school basically gets out early because of the killing. And then Sydney goes home to wait. Oh no, that's before. Never mind. Sydney goes home to wait after being interrogated by the police. Not really interrogated, but questioned by the police, I guess.
Everybody's being questioned at the time. They're questioning everybody in the school.
Everybody's a suspect.
Everybody's a suspect.
Aaron did it.
That scene.
Aaron did it.
That's one of my favorite scenes because everybody looks at Randy at that point like, Randy, you're guilty as fuck. You little Let's go over to the scene where Sid first meets Ghostface face to face. I guess. Oh, it's a puppy.
There's a Ghostface.
I like a puppy.
That's Chico.
Our ratings just went up a lot because of the puppy. So Sid gets the call. No caller ID, obviously, because back in '96 it was a luxury to have caller ID, and that's saying something. Can you imagine? '96 was a time period.
That's why this works back then, because nowadays, if you don't know the number, you don't answer the phone.
I think it could work nowadays because I have anxiety. I pick up phones. Even from the phone numbers that I don't know. I'm like, all right, cool. I have anxiety that I have to pick up this phone and answer it because I don't want to let people down. That's my subconscious talking. Sorry, guys. We're not in therapy hour right now, okay? Let's move on to actually.
Are you sure?
I mean, we could be, guys.
That's tomorrow.
I got a lot of problems.
That's tomorrow in the Manor.
Yeah, that's a bloody Manor Saturday meeting. Guys, I'm tearing up here. No, I'm just playing. So I know let's move on. I got you. The joke was going too long. Sorry, the bits are so far and few in between. I gotta hold on to them as long as I can.
Whiff.
Yep, gotcha. I didn't strike a 4 on that one. Gotcha. So going this when Sid comes face to face with Ghostface, and I gotta say I love the buildup of the scene. I don't like horror movies. It's just some stupid girl running up the stairs with a stasher, and she runs upstairs. And she
trips. She trips.
She
trips too.
I love this scene. I think the scene is so well played out. It's meta just for the sake of meta, which is perfect. Let's go to Matt first since we started with Aaron last time. Aaron, Matt, thoughts on this scene? You know, what you feel about this scene?
I love that the scene or two before it, she's literally one of horror movies. Like, she's like, oh, I don't like horror movies. They run upstairs and she trips. And she goes upstairs and locks her door. But I do admit, though, when she locks her door using that closet, because if you can't get that door adjusted right, you're not coming in. And it proves, Ghostface is out there trying to get through the door, and she's right there. It'd been a quarter of an inch the other way, she'd have gotten gutted right there, and then the franchise is over. And then all of a sudden, because we already think that her boyfriend is the killer, and he just shows up. I mean, that makes it just as terrifying that it's one of those jump scares, but it works because this whole time you're concentrated. Her boyfriend is trying to kill her. And
I thought he was a red herring.
No, I scared him off.
I remember seeing.
I thought it was her dad at first.
I thought it was a red herring. And that's coming from a 9-year-old. I thought it was a red herring. I was like, it's no way it's her boyfriend. They're just trying to throw you off.
But they set the movie up where you think it's either her boyfriend, Randy, or her dad, or Scott.
to be honest, I thought it was Randy for the longest time. I just thought it was the weird.
Oh,
kid.
I did too.
I was like,
I thought he was too. I thought he was
when I was
too
like that. I was
knowledge.
like, he's weird. He's got to be the killer. He's weird. And then I became the weird guy, and I was like, oh, he's not weird. He's just
The
eccentric.
best.
He's the best.
He's
the
like
best.
us.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like
Like
us.
us.
Chelsea, your thoughts on the Sydney meeting Ghostface for the first time and the phone play?
I had fun with that scene because part of it when like she's running up the stairs doing the things, I'm like, no, you know better than this. What are you doing? And then she'll be able to get away from him. I'm like, okay, you're not as dumb as you're making me feel like you are right now. It's fine. But I liked the door thing as well because when she did it the first time with, I believe it was her dad trying to get in, I like they're gonna use that later. Like they're setting that up. And then when she did it, I'm like, called it. But called it. I knew they were going to call him back to that. But when her boyfriend showed up, I thought it was red herring as well. I'm like, they're making it too obvious it's him, so clearly it's not him. And so I was like, just already like, nope.
That's where
Like
you were wrong.
they're just setting us up. They're trying to distract us from something. It's fine. It's not going to be him.
Yeah, no, and I absolutely did not think Stu was involved at all. So like, it was a great.
No, I thought he was too stupid. Like, I thought he was too stupid.
He was stupid.
That's why he was involved.
Stu was stupid. Alec, your thought on this? Scene?
Oh yeah, it's a great scene. This is Wes Craven, making fun of the horror tropes right there from the get go. But I honestly didn't think it was. I didn't think it was her boyfriend at the time. But at the same time, I didn't know who it was. I was thinking maybe it's gonna be somebody that they just introduced in the movie, because I had no clue who it was, and then, but that scene where he pops up and right behind her is just it's a great jump scare. And it holds up for sure. It definitely does.
Absolutely, Aaron.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Tell us about the scene. What you think?
Yeah. So as a 7-year-old watching this, I thought it was super scary to start off. I thought they were gonna just kill every single girl, introduce a girl and kill her. Like, I just thought that this movie was just gonna be about the killer. I wasn't thinking about politics. I wasn't thinking about actors or anything like that. Then when she gets upstairs, gets away from him, and he pops up behind, I'm like, oh, the boyfriend's definitely the killer. And like somehow he's just so quick that he got outside. I didn't think like, oh, he'd have to like run out and get out the window. And how could he get over? I'm like, he just got over. Like, he's like, oh my God, he's that good at killing. He's so good. I didn't even think that as a 7-year-old. Honestly, I just was like, this guy's so good at killing. He knows how to make it look like he's not killing, and he needs to look like he's not a killer. So like, I wasn't thinking about meta or narrative or any of that, and it still worked for me as a kid. And I was just super scared. And then they started like talking about PG-13, and I didn't get that. And then I thought I was going to see a boob, and I did. I was like half pumped, but not really. I was like, stomach's enough for me as a 7-year-old to be like, oh wow, I've seen a lot. So
I see the navel.
Yeah, I saw
the navel. Who needs to see the nipple?
Honestly, nipples kind of gross me out at 7. Still, I was like, boobs are weird. Like 8 or 9 is when I finally started to understand. And like, whatever, I'll admit I didn't like the first set of boobs I saw as a kid. I thought they were gross. I was like, weird. Naked is weird. But back to the Scream. Are we talking about Scream? Or what are we talking about here?
We're talking about
for a minute.
That we're going to put on a show. Boobs are weird.
I just want to say time out for a minute. And point out that mine not in the other room.
Ask him.
I just want a 9-year-old in the other room. Probably
gross or cool. Gross or cool. Ask him. Gross or cool.
If we're going by yours, I think he might like them right now.
Well, I'm not asking about. Whatever. Whatever.
I will go ask him.
Back to the movie, guys. This is a horror. This is a horror movie show talk.
My life is a horror movie, so I guess we're
talking about
scene.
Yeah, let's not talk about that anymore.
So to make a long story short, I still thought it was the boyfriend. The two killer twists. Once you know it, you go back and try to convince yourself, oh, I knew it was 2 people the whole time. And like, no, that would never cross your mind the first time you're watching whether you know, what no matter what age you're at, I think that if you're going into it and you're like, this is 2 killers, like you're a genius. So for me, I still thought it was a boyfriend. I didn't really think about red herrings or anything like that. I just thought I was so smart as a 7-year-old. I had the movie figured out. So super killer guy.
Obviously not.
Nice.
Super
Killer.
He's really good at killing.
Super killer is where it's at. He's got the power of
Killing.
Jason. He's
Yeah.
got the power of Jason. Just disappear and reappear behind people. It works.
Yeah.
And
Look,
it's
it's
close
Brightburn 20 years before it comes out.
There you
But-
go.
But he can't help but kill every time he chases after somebody.
So basically, what happens is Billy then gets arrested as the Ghostface killer until they can prove him not to be, which they do the next day of school. He basically, goes up to Sydney and tells her that she needs to forget about her dead mother. That's always nice. A year ago, it happened a year ago. You need to put it in the
Get over it.
Get over it and give me vagina.
Cry,
That's
baby.
literally what that whole statement meant. That's what that whole statement meant. You need to get over it and give me some because I'm your boyfriend.
I'm frustrated.
So that's where the mindset was in the 90s.
And because, I mean, I was killing you.
And they thought, yeah. Wait, I went to jail, so you need to get over your mom. And
Well,
that's what it is.
Here's the thing, like, not to take this off of the Scream franchise, but Midsommar that came out this year essentially was about the same thing. It was like, get over, I won't go into spoilers, but great movie. I'd consider a horror movie. It was like, get over a horrible event. I've been nice and pretending to care for 6 months. Get over it. See you later. So like these themes are still repeating themselves in movies.
That's why I hate being called the nice guy. I'm just a guy who is a guy. Because the nice guys are the ones that try to do that shit. And I'm not cool with it. So if you're a nice guy listening to this show or watching it, cool your jets. Just
Reddit nice guy.
just fucking relax, bro. Take a chill pill. They're called Xanax. No, I'm just playing. I don't condone that. Do not condone that.
Okay. Hold on.
That's just what it is.
We have a girl on the panel. Kelsey, if you had a boyfriend who they thought attempted to murder you and said, by the way, you need to forget your your dead mom, but I want a piece, how would you feel? Like, I really want to hear this.
Well, I have pretty terrible tastes, so I probably would be like, you're right.
All right.
To be honest.
This is how this show
And with
went.
that,
really
we
quick.
move.
Have you had any tragedies happen in your life?
Just forget about them. It's okay. This show literally went off the rails. All right, let's rein it in a
I
little
do that.
bit. It's okay. I don't mind. I like it going off the rails. We're literally 42
I can
minutes
hear
in
the
and
little
haven't
boy
talked about
laughing
any of
his.
the
I can hear the little boy laughing his ass off from the other room.
So
All right, so let's sort of like wrap this up with the final act of the movie. The final act was a amazing third act. I think how they closed this out was phenomenal. You get the 3 rules in this act of the movie. You get the death of Tatum, which is very unlikely because physics and literally garages can't hold 100 pounds.
She's probably 90 pounds anyway.
As a kid, that was scary
she was
as
90
hell.
pounds. She was 90 pounds.
She was under the weight limit.
She was just under the weight limit. Gotcha, guys.
It checks out.
It checks out. It's okay. But we also get the scene where Sydney becomes the first non-virgin final girl. She becomes the first non-virgin final girl, which is a case that happens. If you look back in horror movies, all of them are virgins or they mysteriously get pregnant. We're not going to really talk about The Dream Child because that movie sucked, in my opinion. In the series of Nightmare on Elm Street, that movie sucked. She mysteriously got pregnant.
Seriously, okay.
Freddy's kinky as fuck.
She did.
Freddy dreamed some things. Let's get off this subject. We've been on this naughty subject for way too long. I just and I brought it back. It's okay. I'm the host. I'm allowed to bring things back. And then we get to the final shutdown where you find out that it's Billy and Stu. And sorry for 23 years of a spoiler, but I guess suck it up. You're watching a show that we're talking.
I'll be right back.
The Scream franchise. And I think the way that they handled the villains to where they gave them a really good motive, gave Billy a really good motive, and Stu just wanted to, join in for this.
Peer pressured, bro. Peer
pressure.
pressure.
It's all about the sequels. It's all about the sequels. Shit, Billy, you went a little too deep.
I'm getting woozy.
Woozy here.
That was horrifying. That was not funny at all. That was so dark.
Terrifying. But you can't help but laugh at it because it's like,
didn't know
oh
what
my
they were
god.
doing.
It's the delivery. It's the delivery.
Matthew Lillard killed this role.
I love
So
Matthew Lillard.
good.
Puns intended.
I love the fact.
Killed this role.
I love the fact when Billy stands up, and Nev Campbell or Sydney is like, "What in the fuck?" And he licks his finger, and he just goes corn syrup, and it looks like pure blood, and you think the dude is toast, and then all of a sudden, they start into it where they're like, well, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna make him look like he did it, and we're gonna kill you, and then later we'll keep doing it, and it's just like.
That's where you get the line. It's all about the sequel, baby. It's all about the sequel.
But just that scene though, when he licks his finger and he's like corn syrup, it's still kind of haunting. The way he delivers that line, you should just see how fucked up he really is.
And you see Nev Campbell, like the her world is shattered. Like she's just like, what the fuck? Like this fucking guy that I just let have some. Like he's the one that's doing it.
I finally buried it. I finally buried it and gave you some, and now you're a
The movie
serial
is
killer.
based on it. We have to address it.
And now I gave you some, and now you're a serial killer. Aaron, thoughts on this third act, man? I thought this was a perfect way to end the movie.
It was just starting back at the beginning of it all with like the party at this house and like outside, which we haven't mentioned at all. Courtney Cox, she's amazing in this movie. The cameraman, Kenny, I believe is the cameraman. Kenny, the cameraman, was great. That really scared me a lot. His death and that whole scene.
David Arquette's really good too. Like,
yeah, David.
Like I go. David Arquette has a lot of hit and misses, but in these, he plays this kind of small town cop that wants to do the best, but he really doesn't know what he's doing, and he's trying to be super cop. He plays it brilliantly through all 4 films.
What do you mean? He is super cop.
Maybe not Scream 3, but
well, enough about Scream 3 for now. With this party scene, everything like that, I think that to have these parties going on when all this tragedy is going on, the teacher's been killed now at this point, Henry Winkler's gone, R.I.P. That death has made me laugh every time, no matter what. I find that death doesn't match up with the tone and the style of the rest of the movie. I thought it was really, really weird. And then being older and knowing who Henry Winkler is, it's like also just like it just doesn't quite match the tone of the rest of the deaths in the movie. Even like, I don't know, but either way, like still these kids are partying when like not only their peers died now, their teachers died, and like they're all at a house where they're going to be a huge target together. Like it's kind of crazy to me, but getting to the final like kill with or the reveal with the 2 killers and stabbing each other and whatnot. I mean, I think that each time I watch it, I have different kind of theories and thoughts about I think Billy kind of knew what he was doing a little bit, and maybe that is obvious to everybody, but I've been back and forth on whether or not that's so obvious that maybe that wasn't what was going on. They're just 2 people. But Going back, and one of the reasons I love rewatching this movie is you can look at Ghostface Killer in each of the scenes where you're not sure which one it is, and you can kind of tell who it is by the style of Ghostface. Like the sloppy ass idiot one is Stu, of course. Like in the more methodical, like technical killer is Billy, and it's just like even that part was thought out, and most likely the same guy was playing Ghostface in both those roles. So whoever that is, the Kane Hodder with the Jason movies, whoever it is with this, he deserves a shout out too, because like he was playing two different characters while being the same one, and it didn't stick out till you go back and really look at it. And and again with the relevance of this movie, the line basically, I'll paraphrase, is that scary movies don't make killers; they make killers more creative, or something like that. And
That's actually the line.
it's okay. I just wanted to make sure, but
Yeah.
I mean, we have this little movie called Joker coming out this weekend. The same stupid ass argument that comes up all the time about people saying that movies make them killers. And I saw Joker last night. Awesome
I saw it last
movie.
night too.
Yeah, but Scream is the movie we're talking about tonight. Scream. And
I'm probably gonna have a special Bloody Manor when that DVD comes out. I'm just
But-
giving everybody a heads up.
I'll be in line with everybody else. But again, it's just showing these themes that Scream, when it came out, these weren't being talked about. These weren't being said, maybe a little bit here or there, but they weren't being presented to the public as part of the minutia of the movie. And I didn't know who was going to survive by the end of it. I didn't know if I really thought the dad was toast, and just again, I thought they were about to, peel off or they're going to peel off his tape, and he's going to be like, haha, Sydney, I was in on it with them. You shouldn't have did your laundry wrong. I don't know. I was
the Mr. White with the colors.
I was again 7, so I couldn't think
Great
about
Michael.
Wrong.
But either way, down to the very end, I was super happy that she survived. I wasn't at a jaded point where I wanted the dark ending where it's oh, no happy endings. That happened at 13 to 16 type of range where I was
Yeah, I have too many of those movies.
I'm now at
happiness in my life.
Yeah, so I wanted the good guy to win. I really like Sydney throughout this movie. Which, again, as a not to get this will be less weird than my boobs are weird thing, but as a 7-year-old boy, it was really hard to get a female protagonist for me to root for them and for me to be able to relate to them as a 7-year-old and be interested in the movie and not think that's a weird, I want to see a boy hero. I don't want to see a girl hero. I didn't look at her as, I just looked at her as a good character who I wanted to root for. So I guess
you must not have watched a lot of My Girl.
I'm admitting to being a closet sexist as a 7-year-old, but I said,
it's okay. You're over there.
I can hear the
I
Me
was
Too
rooting for
movement.
The movie did a great job. So I loved the ending of it, and it just made me. It really. This was the second or third horror movie I'd ever seen, so it really made me want to get into the genre. And then, I just was this is as scary as it gets. So bring on everything else. And I was totally wrong. This isn't.
This is not as scary as it gets, but it's one of the best horror movies.
But it's a really great place to start. And again, why it goes back to what I said originally, not to cut you off, but it's a foundational piece of creating a cinephile, in my opinion. Is
absolutely
getting them not only to watch this movie, but really understand this movie and get that it's not just your run-of-the-mill dumb slasher. Really, a lot of the slashers aren't just run-of-the-mill dumb slashers when you look into them more. But this one wasn't as hard to see that with. It's a brilliant movie, and the ending killed it. So.
Absolutely. Alec, thoughts on the ending?
I love the ending. I think this is where you really get to see the the screenwriting shine. I think with this this last final act, you get the dialogue between Billy and Stu, and the acting is fantastic in this movie. I think Nev Campbell does a really great job in this movie. Skeet Ulrich is really good, and I mean Matthew Lillard's performance as hokey as it is, that's memorable. That performance in his performance in this movie is memorable. I always remember the "I'm getting woozy here." That makes me laugh all the time. I think it's something that me and my friends We quote it all the time.
Listen, I have a
Dark
dark
people.
personality. What do you want from me? I run a horror podcast show.
I'm telling you, me and my friends, we quote it all the time.
Listen, I quote things I shouldn't quote all the time, like
It's all right.
put a smile
We
on
know.
your face.
We know.
But yeah, like I was saying earlier with
there's
Nancy
3
Campbell,
people in this room that got that joke, and I love it. Kelsey, newbie on the movie. I didn't mean to rhyme. I didn't mean to rhyme that, but I did. Thoughts on the ending? What did your mind go through when you saw the Ascending?
All right, well, I'll start with right before the hookup because Billy's being so charming. And I could be like, oh, I really kind of like him. He's kind of cute. And I'm like, okay, he's the killer because I tend to like the killer in the movies. And then, of course, he gets stabbed.
Now we know your personality traits. Okay, got you guys.
So then he gets stabbed, and I'm like, he's not the killer. Okay, I was off on that. And so then the movie progresses, and then the corn syrup scene happens, which I immediately texted everybody. I'm like, in all capitals, it's fucking corn syrup. Because I was just like, so like, oh my gosh, I was right, but yet I wasn't right. I was just like so shocked. And then when he stabs Willard, I'm like, I knew he was going to do deeper. I'm like, he's a psychopath. Like, don't trust him. Don't trust him. He's crazy. And then when he goes deeper, I'm like, what did you expect? You're hanging out with a person that stabs people. What did you expect?
Multiple times.
He just got
got
carried away. He wanted to be. He just got a little carried away. He was
peer
excited.
pressure, man. Like peer pressure makes you do some crazy stuff.
Oh my god, I can talk about it.
See, that's one reason like I liked it too, because it's a very common dynamic. Like you can compare it with like Harley Quinn. But you can like compare it to like other like bad guy couples like Harley Quinn and Joker. There's the crazy powerful one and the one that's stupid enough to do everything they say, and that's exactly what he is. Do
you think they were in love with each other a little bit? Maybe.
I wouldn't like
movie. Really?
Yeah.
I think it was about this much actually.
I think Stu was in love with him.
Listen.
Yeah,
I think Billy was in love with Stu. Actually,
I think that he needed to get a little action from somewhere, and Billy was the psychopath and was like, "Listen, Linda, I need cookies. I'm hungry for cookies, and you got what I need."
Oh,
so anyway,
I'm so sorry.
What? How do you know Stu's not a baker? Leave him alone. Maybe he likes making chocolate chip cookies in his free time. He got a rich house. How do you know he didn't have the ingredients for the cookies that Billy needed?
Speaking of baking. Are we ready for Scream 2?
We're almost ready. Kelsey, continue what you were saying about the ending.
All right. Well, just final thoughts on it is, so like that whole scene happened and she came out on top, and I knew she was going to be in the future movies because I saw it so much later. But yet, even though I knew that, still during the movie, I was still questioning it. I'm like, how is she gonna this is a pretty sticky wicket she's in right now. Like, how is she gonna get out of it? Is her dad's gonna get out of it? Who survives the scene? And so when it finally ended, and it was like, okay, so this is what happened. All right. I'm excited to see her in 2 because she is now going to, like, I thought she was badass in 1, but now experiencing everything she experienced in 1, I'm like, I want to see what she has to bring in 2 because, I mean, she should be a pretty badass right now. She survived being slaughtered multiple times. So that's mostly kind of like how I was watching it, was more thinking about what does this mean for the next one.
Absolutely. Alec does have Alec does have to dip, guys, but we're going to go ahead and let him be on the panel while we give the grade for Scream. And what we gave to Scream as an overall panel was an A+. It definitely was a genre starter. It gave meta horror something to really hold their teeth onto and sink their teeth into. And you get a lot down the line. But Alec, it was great having you as always. Yeah. You can go ahead and go to your room, and we'll see you next time here on the Blood Manor.
Later. I'm sorry I didn't get to talk about my second favorite Scream movie, Scream.
I want to hear it. Peace out.
All right, man. We'll talk to you later.
Peace out, guys.
All right, and getting over to our next one, I'm not going to leave that on so nobody gets their face blocked, but we are going to jump over to Scream 2, and it's a smaller panel now, so hopefully we'll make it through here a little bit quicker, because we are already on an hour. I didn't think that was going to take an hour to talk about Scream, and it
It's such
did.
a good movie, though.
It's
Yeah.
such a good movie. Let's just kind of give our overall thoughts, maybe some things that we really loved about Scream 2, so we can make this one a little bit faster, and then we'll jump into Scream 3, which seems to be Aaron's one of Aaron's favorite Screams.
Darling.
So Scream 2 for me is a really good movie. I enjoyed this, not as much as I enjoyed the first one, but I did enjoy this. I would say a little less. There were some things that I really like. To go back to tripping about thinking it's the boyfriend again was kind of like touching the territory again. I know why they did it, but to kind of rebat it and give the same thing that you did with Billy, except change the ending that it's not him. I thought bringing Billy's parents into the movie, Billy's mother into the movie was brilliant. Bringing the ability to find a serial killer that you could partner up with online is terrifying. People, let's not do that ever. Let's just not. Can we not? I think the opening scene to basically kill somebody in your movie, was the rules game? No, the rules was in Star Trek. Rules were in the first one.
Yeah, at the
There
party.
are rules in this.
And the third one with the trilogy.
Well, and there's rules to sequels brought up in this
Yeah,
one too.
I guess there is. I
Party.
guess there's rules of each one.
A little
Okay,
bit,
so
but not.
we
He
get
doesn't
to-
really elaborate.
So let's go over to Kelsey first, since you really haven't talked after me yet. Let's excuse me. Give your thoughts on the movies. I'll be right back, guys.
All right. So for the second one, I do agree with him where a lot of the things were kind of repeats. However, I still enjoyed them just as much. They did be able to a new spin on it. The cast is freaking amazing. Of Scream 2, I remember that was like the first thing I thought. I'm like, everybody is in this movie.
Yeah.
Like the cast is freaking amazing. And then I love the throwbacks to little subtle things in Scream, like when Tori Spelling is playing her, and like she had joked about like, oh, it's probably going to be Tori Spelling that plays me. It cracked me up. I'm like, oh, they made a reference to that. Probably helped me remember too, because I literally just watched them back to back. But I just love the callbacks to the first one. I feel like the humor was revved up a little bit, which that was actually like my favorite part of the Scream franchise was the humor. So I really enjoyed that. And the ending, I sort of, like I said, sort of suspected things in the first one. I had no idea what was happening in the second one. I'm like, okay, this is what's happening now.
Mhm.
I did not predict that
ending
in
was a mess.
any way. So it was definitely a ride for sure. It was definitely not what I was expecting, but in a good way. So I enjoyed too.
Yeah.
Aaron, what did you
I
think?
thought
Homie?
I thought the opening, like, just to kind of talk about that for a minute. I thought it was pretty amazing that just right away, that right after with Scream 2 started filming while Scream was still in theaters. Actually, I looked this up, and Scream was in theaters. The first one was in theaters from November to April, so it was in theaters for 5 months. And so they started filming Scream 2, and they knew that it was like making moves. It was going to be a horror movie that they like the horror movies they referred to in the first one. So to start out with a stab movie, like that was just like, to be that self-aware, to have the black people walking in talking about how black people are always the first ones to die in horror movies. And I was a little older when I saw it, so I was starting to pay attention to like the subtext and like the hints being dropped. I was like, Jada Pinkett Smith is done. She is so dead. And at this movie premiere, everybody's acting like such assholes. It's the worst movie premiere ever. Everybody's yelling. They're running around in ghost face masks, stabbing each other. You can't tell anything that's going on. I mean, while like it does get more comedic as it starts off, again, the opening is just a grisly, harsh opening. It's like super, super creepy. And everybody's watching this woman get killed in front of an audience. And they're like, get out of the way of the movie. Like, we want to watch the movie. Like, and it's just like absolutely crazy. So
Exactly.
another, like, these movies know how to start off, and they don't necessarily think we have to start off intense and keep intense, but to start off intense, it just immediately gets you immersed into these movies. And so that opening, I was immediately on board with that. This is really most internet to be like, we're going to come up with a self-referential movie, making fun of a tragedy and how we use tragedies to create, art, essentially. It becomes playthings for us. And, and it's not always taking 50 years like with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. They sometimes will make references right away to tragedies happening here. So just overall, Scream 2, I thought it was really, really interesting to revisit. It really holds up well, almost as well as the first one. The first one's an absolute classic. I wouldn't call this a classic, but I'd call this a pretty damn good movie. And it holds up really well. I feel like the way that Sydney is blamed by Billy's mom for Billy's death, and Billy's mom not at all like holding her son accountable for any of this, and like blaming the woman in this case. It's like a weird, again, like there's this weird like battle with like blaming women for like their past in these movies that keeps coming up throughout each one. And Sydney,
absolutely,
like, yep. I mean, it's like Sydney's past is held against her, and like by Billy's mom, it's like, you're the reason he's gone. Like, Billy's the reason he's gone. Like,
I take it a step further, and I would say that she's the reason he's gone.
It's fair enough as they really get into more of the detail. Exactly. Yeah. And maybe that's just a whole narrative on how we'll look for anybody to transfer our guilt to other than ourselves.
Actually, we can probably say Billy's dad is the reason that Billy's gone.
Yeah. And then,
if it wasn't for him not being able to keep it in his
and the
pants.
thing is, and again, with the second killer played by Timothy Oliphant, I forgot his name in this, but he's amazing. He's just Mickey, right? Okay. So like he's played by like this Quentin Tarantino film student wannabe, like, and it's just like I'm sure Kevin Williamson had 10 million of those people come across his face again. So you write about what you know as a writer, and Kevin Williamson knows this genre. He knows how to just brilliantly weave it in. And again, it's like a peer pressure angle a little bit for Mickey here, where he wants to become a famous killer and he wants to become this, and Billy's mom just is like, I just need someone to use to get my ultimate revenge. And she didn't give a fuck about him, just like Billy didn't give a fuck about Stu. So a lot of ways, yes, it's a sequel repeating a lot of the tropes, but in some sharper and different ways. So I really appreciate that. And that opening, again, I love all the openings of these movies. They really all in different ways, but except for one I'll talk about. But I love the opening of this for sure.
I'm guessing I know which one you're going to talk about that you didn't love the opening for.
Yeah. I'm in a scary movie.
I want to touch the opening. The whole movie is awesome. I like the fact that they took what worked in the first one and built on it, and kind of most of the case it worked. I want to talk about, he was talking about the open. Walk into the bathroom, you find what's open and you go. We've got stalls, we've got urinal, and everybody is dressed up. You don't think about it. When you walk in there, you pull it out, you start peeing. You don't think about maybe the guy behind me is going to stick the knife in my back. And then he walks back to his seat, sitting next to her, and he just sits there and he's like watching the movie, and then all of a sudden she's like, wait, something's not right, and he just reaches out the knife and just guts her. Like, that is terrifying.
You never heard Dane Cook's thing about movie theaters, have you?
Yeah, I have.
Not today. Not today.
But back in, I'm talking back when Scream 2 wasn't out there. You went in, you peed, and you didn't think about it. It kind of goes back to like, you don't know who's sitting next to you or who lives in the apartment next door. It's great. I love that fact. I love that when Gail's cameraman gets offed again, and he gets just yanked into the van.
That's Randy.
Yeah.
It is Randy. You're right. It is Randy.
And the cameraman doesn't get off in this movie. It was the best.
You're right. It was Randy. It was Randy, but he just gets yanked into that van. That whole scene where Gail and him they're all running around. They're trying to figure out what's going on, and that door opens and Randy was got to be brutal because of just all the blood that's dripping out, and he just pops the front door and just steps out, and nobody knows it until they open the door and Randy's gone. It also brought the comedy aspect to it. So it kind of brought more comedy to it, but it also upped the violence. You know, in the first one, you know, the kills were brutal, but in this one, they were pretty hardcore. And then you have, you know, the person that you could honestly have thought was possibly the killer in the beginning, in the first one, actually saves Sydney's ass. You know?
No, absolutely. I just wanted to mention Randy's death again because that was a brutal death. And she says it at the end of the movie. She's like, I had to kill Randy for what he was saying about my son. I was like, damn. And you brutally murdered that man. And it sucks because Randy was a really solid character. He's literally my favorite character.
It's something, it's something I felt like the franchise kind of got away from after Randy. They got gun shy. They picked the wrong major character, I think, to kill off. I had to say so myself.
I think they should have stuck to the guns and killed Dewey.
With what they've done to go head over heels to introduce Randy's sister later on with a VHS tape and shit to get Randy back into it. Like they made a mistake by killing him in this movie, but it was impactful and it made you moving forward not sure who was gonna be off. And then hindsight's 2020, and you look back after 4 and you're like, oh, like there's certain people who just became safe after 2, where there was never a death like Randy's. I guess is what I'm trying to say. That
no, not after 2. After 2.
There's never a death like Randy's. They would introduce people and just pop them. But
Randy was kind of our guide, you know, as an audience. He was like the narrator of the movie. He would come in and explain what's going on from even breaking the fourth wall, sort of. He's like, look, this is what's happening because of this, this, and this. And he would kind of walk us through what's going on.
Well, for me, I mean, I think anybody
and he still does that.
I mean, anybody in this film community, anybody that's a film fan that likes this franchise, kind of connects to Randy because we kind of are Randy. If you think about it, our characteristics of loving movies and stuff like that, whether it be horror, comedy, whatever you may enjoy, you find yourself being that character because you explain the tropes of that. So that's why I've always connected to Randy. I've loved horror movies, so that I had a deep connection with Randy. I was the best friend. Growing up, I was the best friend. So I understood Randy's pain. Sad. Anyway.
And I like he explains his death. I like the fact that he explains in the third one why he
get to the third one. Just let me get to the grade. So Scream 2 ended up with a B+, guys. We rated it with the 5 of us as a B+, which is a damn good score for a sequel. As Randy said, the sequel is never good as the original, and I agree in this sense. But
except for what movie does he say the sequel
except for
T2.
Trivia question, but Godfather Part 2.
Correct. Yeah, and so the other thing that just should be noted is that I mentioned this while you were away having your coughing fit off screen.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
Yeah,
no problem.
Dying. I'm glad you're back with us. We weren't sure. The muted cough looked even worse than hearing it because it was just like I was just like, oh my god. But
I'm dying. It's okay. I'm dying.
Hey, I'll be right back. You'd be dead.
But the cool part about this is it went into production while Scream 1 was still in theaters because Scream 1 was in theaters for 5 months, and so this went into for them to have the awareness as Kevin Williamson and Wes Craven working so closely together on this. I think ironically after this movie, Kevin Williamson was helping with the story, but not writing as much. So it's interesting that we had the death of Williamson and, Randy kind of in this movie. So Williamson was Randy. So in a way, it's like very meta that like Williamson was like a presence over the next two movies, but he wasn't in them just like Randy. So
Yep.
another
And now
brilliant.
we're gonna get to the one that Aaron has to defend, because I think this is a wonky ass movie, and that's Scream 3. And I know one of my other panelists thinks it's a wonky movie, so it's gonna be fun. We'll even the battlefield out a little bit. Maybe Matt will side with you. For me, it's a fine movie. It's an okay movie. Trilogy wise, I agree with most tropes of the trilogies. The third one's not as good. You get really wonkiness. You bring in basically everybody's doppelganger for them all to die, because they want to fantasy kill everybody, I guess. And it's just like it's too much. I'm like the Sydney's mom scene. It's a cool scene, but I think the scene in the house where she like comes back to life, and then like it's a bunch of other stuff, and then to have a villain that basically said he plotted it from the beginning. Listen, get out of my face with that. I want to punch you in the face for that one. That's stupid. Come on, it's stupid. Yeah, I went to find Billy because I knew that he would be perfect for this. So Billy, the person that we all admitted was a psychopath and was a brilliant psychopath, couldn't think for himself. No, that makes me so pissed off. You literally cancel out every villain that you've had because they needed this mastermind. That's why I gave the movie a C. I'm gonna be completely honest. I gave it a C because the Scream franchise is still one of my favorite franchises. To this day, it's still one of my favorite franchises because it's one that means a lot to me. It's one that I remember watching as a kid. It's one that I rewatch when I was an adult. And it's one that I even watch now because it's a really good franchise. During the horror time, it's perfect for me. And that's even with 3. I'll watch 3 because I like getting to 4. And 4 still has...
I like getting to 4.
That's a bridge. It's not a bridge. It's a movie.
For you, it's a movie. For me, it's a bridge, a long, long bridge that I have to cross. With its wonkiness, it's like one of those rope bridges that if you move too much, the wind's gonna blow you off. But it just has the right amount of wind, so it keeps you leveled while you're walking across. Sorry, Aaron, but I will let you defend first. Go ahead and defend this movie.
Yeah. So, overall, my thoughts on this movie. It's not my favorite of the series. I like it more than one other movie in the series, and I like it about as much as 2. So pretty high praise. I gave 2 a B+, and I really enjoyed it. And I enjoy this one for very, very different reasons. And it's one that I feel, again, most of these movies, other than the last one, each time I watch it, I find parts of it that I enjoy and ways to look at it more differently. Or differently, I guess, not more differently. That's redundant. But with 3, when this, we made jokes about the Me Too movement today because 2 years ago, you couldn't really make jokes about it. And 2 years ago was the last time I saw this movie. It was right after the Me Too movement had exploded. And people are going to be like, why are you bringing that up? Well, in the movie, basically, they talk about how Sydney's mom is a victim of Hollywood. She was used by a producer who was very Harvey Weinstein-like. This movie was by Dimension, which is an offshoot of Miramax, which was ran by the Weinsteins. I wouldn't be surprised if part of this movie being made is back then, it was just common knowledge. Back then, we were even talking about before this a little bit. Back then, every movie made jokes about how in Hollywood you slept to the top. How many movies are making jokes about that are coming out in 2019? Not many. And when you view it through those eyes a little bit, this movie becomes a really horrific Me Too movie in a lot of ways. And that's just how I viewed it my last time. And it intensified my enjoyment in the movie and my overall view of the intelligence that the movie was presenting. So we'll get into specifics as we go here, but it being on a fake set in a fake city, they literally cast like. One thing I like about this movie is a lot of the things that go into the movie, they're leaning into the criticisms you're going to have about this movie. The thing you said yourself, they had all these doppelgangers who aren't even that is the exact criticism everybody's going to have. They literally casted discount versions of these people to be killed in the movie because they didn't want to kill them. And it's like, that is the criticism, and they lean into it, which is what this franchise does so well. And again, you watch this movie throughout, they go to a fake set in a fake city. One of the best scenes in any of the movies. In fact, I will say the best scene, excluding opening or closing scenes, is a scene of Sydney in her fake house where she thinks she knows each way she's going. And because it's a set and it's designed for certain ways to get certain camera angles, it's not designed as her house. So she's running around as if she's the killer in her own house and doesn't know where she's going. And she thinks she does know where she's going. Watch that scene back. It holds up to any other scene in the entire franchise. 1, 2, 3, or 4. Obviously.
And I like the fact she I like how she opens the door and almost falls an entire floor to the ground because she thinks she's like, oh, I'm in my house, I'm good. And then all of a sudden she's like, ah!
Yeah, and some of my favorite aspects of Scream are certain parts where it's like that could be in Scream or Scary Movie and work just as well. And like opening the door to the floor and like, oh, I almost felt Looney Tunes style. It works in either movie and in very different. So again, those are just like some of the reasons we're going to keep talking about this as we go on. I really like the fact that the character's name is Roman. I don't think that's an accident. I think that's a little shout out and call out to Roman Polanski being a fucking creep. And so again, meta narratives here, and even in like just everywhere here. And it's just like I can keep going. I have a list of reasons why I love this movie. But if you want to go to somebody else to try to talk me off this bridge, go ahead. But I love this bridge.
Go ahead, Matt. Talk about Scream 3.
Well, personally, my favorite scene of Scream 3 is the Randy scene where we get to see his sister, and she's like,
great.
Look, Randy has helped you one last time. And they put the tape in. And Randy starts talking about, I lost my virginity this one night at the video store. And then all of a sudden, you can just feel the emotion because you're like, you feel your conscience being pulled away because that's what Randy was. He talked us through these movies. And then Dewey starts laughing at the chick. He's like, hey, and he knows somebody's going to crack a joke. And I like the fact that we learn more about Sydney's mom. Like, she's brought up through all of these movies. Your mom this, your mom that. But we actually get to learn about her. I kind of like Scream 3. It's my least of all 4 that I like. But needless to say,
it's good
and I like this, and I love the scene where they're in the makeup department, where you've got all of these various costumes and so forth, and you don't know, he's in there somewhere, and she's freaking out because she's trying to go, get out. Mm-hmm. Or he's in the shadows, and then he strikes. Kind of like in Batman, in Batman Begins, where he's hiding. Bruce is learning how to be a ninja, and they keep jumping from row to row to row, and it's kind of the same feel. But it's not the greatest of them, but there are parts that I really like in this movie. And I like the fact that it opens the world. The first two are kind of like, the first one is basically at Sydney's house or the school. The second one is at their college. This one opens the world. Now you know that this can happen anywhere. And that opening film, you're watching it, and all of a sudden this knife pulls out. So,
you froze there a little bit, Matt, but yeah, absolutely.
Sorry about that. Upstairs neighbors gaming.
there are scenes to love about this movie. I don't want to people think that I hate on this movie. There are a lot of scenes to love about this movie. I think there's scenes beautifully portrayed. I just don't like how they portrayed the villain in this one. That's what really off-turned me. I don't think you needed to take away from any of the other villains that were in the series
stepbrother
to make it this powerful. You could have literally just left him as a stepbrother or a half-brother, and it would have been powerful because he was forgotten. No other villain needed, just him. But they added to it, and I just don't think that's where the series would have went initially. It's always about the revenge game. And I think it paid off as a revenge game, but for me, it did a lot of things that I hate that horror movies do nowadays. You have to have this mastermind. Just one person can do this. Really, actually, each one was one person. They had a lackey. Kelsey, 2019 eyes. You laid your eyes on a movie that I told you was going to be wonky. I may have got
poisoned the well. Poisoned the well.
I kind of may have already told you that it was wonky to begin with. Sorry about that if I ruined your viewpoint on it. But
No, you're fine.
Kelsey, thoughts on Scream 3?
All right. Well, my biggest complaint was actually very similar to yours. I felt like it almost tried to make the ending of the first one less effective. Like it didn't damage the first one in any way, but it felt like it kind of tried to. So that part kind of bothered me. I don't know. Just I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it almost as much as the other ones. I did have a harder time getting attached to characters as much in this one as well. Like I fell in love with certain characters in the first one, slightly less, but still some in 2. I really kind of didn't care about anybody of the new characters, to be perfectly honest. So that kind of deadened my interest in it a little bit. One of my favorite parts of the movie, though, and it's a recurring thing that I actually forgot to bring up, is how indestructible Dewey apparently is, because he has practically been slaughtered every single movie, and he still comes back.
Dewey is the goddamn superhero.
Yeah,
Dewey is Superman, just not as strong. Dewey is Superman.
Like every time I'm like, and he's alive. Like every single time, like I'm like, oh no, don't kill Dewey, he's dead, and then I find out he survived that?
It's when he gets hit with the butt end of a fucking knife. And it's just like the luckiest thing in the world. He literally has Domino's powers.
Yep.
He has Domino's powers.
I love that sound too. When they throw it, it makes that sound.
It's great. Aaron, I'm going to throw this back to you one time to defend the ending and the villain, because I know that you want to.
Yeah.
Before we go ahead and give this a grade and move on to 4.
Absolutely. So one thing is, just this definitely opened up. Jay and Silent Bob have a cameo, so this confuses in the universe. So another point to this movie, just saying. With the killer, again, going to the theme of like the Me Too movement, and in this case, incels, one of the main reasons he kills is he was rejected by a woman. And one of the main, and again, it goes back to this, and one of the main reasons that Maureen Prescott is killed is that she rejects a man. And it's this women having choices and being punished for having choices. So internalized feminism, again, I'm not John Roca here who goes right to feminism with every angle here, but with these movies, I feel it's layered on pretty thick once you see it, and it's a very clear part of the message of these movies. And again, the killer this wasn't back when, incels and, the angry white male who doesn't get laid as a killer was a cliche. Maybe it was, but I mean, not like it is today, and like not. And so again, it all goes into these continual themes in this movie and throughout. And I think, again, maybe this is my way of seeing it to make it good in my eyes. It's leaning into the fact that this is what the third movie in the series does. It fucks up the original. It does too much, and that's what this movie was doing. And it doesn't ruin those movies, in my opinion, but it tries to. I can kind of agree with that because that seems to be what all these. Look at the third movie in Halloween. Look at the third movie in Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Take that back right now. Season of the Witch is a fine movie.
They tried to ruin Michael Myers, though. Like
I agree that, but I enjoyed that movie for what it was.
But the thing is, you're in the minority there, and especially at the time, which is why at 4 we went right back to Michael Myers.
That's true.
This is again, I think this was in 3 its way of trying to lean into the fact that this is a trilogy. This is what trilogies do. The third one has to find a way to justify its existence, and that's what it did here. So again, I just think the themes throughout were really present. Best scene in any of the movies is that scene in the house with Sydney. And I thought the killer worked, and the first scene was great. So this is right up there with 2 for me.
All right, and
easily.
The grade that we gave this is a B-, which isn't bad. It's not bad. It's not terrible in any sense. It's still in the higher end. It's nowhere near a C or an F like we gave Poultrygeist, because fuck that movie. No one see that movie ever. That is an ongoing joke. Alan, that movie was terrible. Again, I'll mention it every Bloody Manor that I can. That movie was a terrible movie. We are going to move on.
Can I just ask one question?
Yes.
Did any of my argument at all slightly make you want to go back, and not sway you, slightly make you want to go back and view it a little bit through that lens?
Yes.
See
yeah,
I'll rewatch it.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna rewatch it again. I always do. But
get back to me and tell me if you think I'm way off base here, but I think there's a little bit of a nugget here, and they're too smart to. And maybe this is why Kevin Williamson, by the 4th one, is fucking shoved out the door. They're like, all right, smart ass. You got too close to. I mean, I'm sure Weinstein saw this movie working at Miramax and working the head Dimension Films. So, again, I get if that's I mean,
it streamed through 3. Pretty much everybody saw that movie,
and people were making jokes in Family Guy and at the Oscars about how Harvey Weinstein, don't be in a room alone with him if you're an actress. So, and it was laughed at until it wasn't funny 2 years ago, and now we're back to laughing at it again because there's been 10 Me Too jokes on this this stream, and I'm not offended by it, but it's an interesting observation because 2 years ago. Not true actually, but either way, it's fine, and I'll admit I've made them on this, but it's an interesting observation again that when this movie came out, it was viewed as this is cliche. A bunch of movies are doing this. That's not a big deal. And again, one last thing is that not being connected to the characters is a design because all of those actors were idiots. You weren't supposed to care about them. It was a commentary on how actors are terrible people.
My thing was, it wasn't the fact that they were doppelgangers and that
discount. They're discount versions.
They're discount versions that they just wanted to find ways to kill. Because they probably wanted to kill Neville Campbell by the time of this.
True.
And they were like, let's find somebody that looks like her.
And Nev Campbell was expensive by that point. These were literally discount versions. So again, we'll close it up. I'm sorry to talk so much about
you're good.
Scream 3 here and overall.
Also, comedy is the best healer. Patch Adams has said it. So laugh. Hold on to things. Laugh. Yeah. While yes, it's a very serious topic, I laugh at the weirdest times.
Yeah. No,
with things.
I wasn't saying not to make jokes. I was just it's an interesting observation to see as things go on.
I agree with
what's okay and what's not okay.
Serious. It's still very serious.
I've had so many conversations about Joker this week. And if Joker came out 10 years ago, no one cares and everybody's fine. But now it's coming out in a period right now where that is a taboo and too close to home for people. So it's a huge, and I'm glad it's being released. All art should be released. Censorship of art is fucked up. So
100% agreed. I don't want to talk about spoiler talk. Matt probably hasn't seen the movie yet.
I wasn't saying I'm just saying the movie coming out was a problem for a lot of people.
It's a very disturbing movie. That's all I'll say.
That's why it should be seen.
Movie.
That's why it should be out.
Should definitely be seen, especially with the mental health issues that we have in the world right now. Speaking of that, there's some mental health issues that go on in this next movie, and that would be Scream 4. This movie I loved. It came back and it flipped what Scream 1 did, and it gave me something different that I fell in love with. I understand people have issues with the opening, but I kind of loved it. It was 100% meta, which was great. Watching a movie inside a movie inside a movie was phenomenal. It was movieception, as I like to call it. I think choosing your final girl as your killer is something that a lot of people didn't expect. Choosing your Randy character this time around as your killer was something that people didn't expect. To kill off Hayden Panettiere, I'm gonna butcher her last name.
Kirby. Just call her Kirby.
There we go. To kill Kirby. Kirby's a nice name.
Kirby is back.
To kill off Kirby, or almost kill off Kirby the way that you did, was crazy. I definitely thought I'm blanking on her name. She is the
Emma Roberts.
Publicist. There you go. To kill off the publicist the way they did was great. Oh, yeah. I really enjoyed this movie. Let's kick it off with Kelsey. Kelsey, your 2019 eyes. How did you view this movie?
All right. Well, starting with the beginning, I loved the beginning. I liked how the cast of the beginning. So I'd be like, this person's in this movie? And then I'm like, oh, this person's in this movie? Nope. Like it was like a false start over and over again. And I really liked that. It was different. I wasn't expecting it. I loved that the killer was a girl. As a girl, I feel like, I don't know, I like being able to relate to the killer sometimes. So I'm like, yeah, get him. And then I'm like, wait, I'm not supposed to feel that way. Okay. I similarly felt like the Randy type character being the killer was really neat because I didn't expect it. That was a shock to me. I kind of suspected her a little bit just because, I don't know, she just felt off throughout the movie, if that makes sense. Like conversations with her just didn't feel like natural conversations. And as a person who has talked to people who are not quite all there, there's like a deadness to them. And I got that, like she was bringing that out in her role throughout the entire movie. So that's why I'm like, she seems off. So when I found out it was her, I was like, yes, I was right. Oh, this is cool. I love that it's a female this time. So I enjoyed the movie. It's actually my second favorite in the franchise, surprisingly. And I enjoyed the way it ended and just like, she's just a brutal, she's just brutal. And like just how like raw and how she wanted to kill her family members so bad, just had no regard for her at all. I don't know. I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Let's go to Matt because I'm gonna wait to go to Aaron because he wants to tear down this movie.
Hyperbole on my end, not from me.
Matt, your viewpoints on Scream 4.
I like the fact that we actually get to see people like us that really appreciate these horror movies, and the fact that we all, binge horror movies. It's Halloween time, it's time to get a little spooky. So why not, if you live in a town where this shit actually supposedly happened, why not go out in the middle of nowhere and just stream it and have fun? I like the fact of that. I like the fact that she just wanted to one-up Sydney. Cindy was, this shining star, and she got lost in the background. She's like, I'm family too. That shit happened in our place. Maybe it's time for me to take the limelight. I like that. The opening, I still think the opening is hysterical. The first time I saw it, I was like, what the fuck? And then somebody else died. And then you realize that they're just going through the various stab movie openings. And growing up, I was in love with, oh my God, she played Rogue in the original X-Men trilogy.
Anna Paquin.
Thank you. I was in love with her, and then she was in True Blood, which it was even better. But just to see her in this movie, and then she gets gutted like a fish, and I'm like, what the fuck? So I actually had a lot I really enjoyed about with this movie, and then the whole twist in the end that it's this Sydney and Randy character that are actually killing everybody. I loved it, and she walks away at the end. She gets her time in the sun. So, yeah, I liked it. Now, let's hear Aaron.
I mean, like, I'm not going to rip it apart. It is my least favorite.
I call bullshit on that.
I don't think that's a shame in a series that has 3 as strong movies as these. So with Scream 4, like I think it took on the so the original subject it takes on is it's taking on in this instance reboots and remakes, right? So we've gotten original horror movies, we've gotten sequels, trilogies. I think taking on reboots and remakes, which are the hardest to make successful anyways, is probably the hardest subject to tackle. So that's what I'll say on that end, like is that it's the hardest one to kind of be meta about because it's, I mean, it already pretty much is being a remake. But honestly, I think that all the young characters are trash in this movie, other than Kirby. And
Terrible people.
Great.
yeah, like
Terrible people.
they're just, and so I hate watching a horror movie where I'm not feeling conflicted for who I'm losing. And if I'm not feeling conflicted, I at least want to like really actively cheer for them. They just were like pretty shitty people. They weren't like super shitty and fun shitty. It was just like shit, you know, not great. And like Kirby, I'm like, you know, like as horror fans, we're all social outcasts here. And like now we have a cool horror fan that's great, but like where, you know, I don't believe this Kirby person exists. Like I didn't buy the character. I was like, this is too good to be true. Like for me, viewing it through my 2011 eyes at the time, I was 21. So like, I was a little skeptical. I thought I knew a lot about movies. I really didn't at that point. But so maybe that's part of what led into this. I've only visited this one a couple times. I don't know. I think that the killers were both predictable, and they were predictable for the wrong reasons. All the young people in this movie, they didn't get enough screen time. So it was really obvious that Emma Roberts, what's her name in the movie?
Her name in the movie
That's my
is
point. Like we have
Jill.
see, that's my point though. Is that we all had to look it up and think about it. We were like, who is Jill? I had no idea even what letter it started with. And Jill, but the whole time watching it the first time, I'm like, Jill is supposed to be playing the person who's like the protagonist and lead in this movie. And like she's not getting the screen time of the protagonist and lead. She's the killer. And I was a little surprised with Rory McCulkin, whatever his. I'm just not good with the names of this one. I haven't gone back and revisited this one very many times because I don't feel like it's that fun.
Charlie.
Charlie. I just don't feel like it's that fun. I feel like I feel like it's all been done before. Emma killing Charlie at the end to get all the shine, like she just happened to like they took it like a half step further. But like, you know, none of the main people die. You know, again, like it's like I think
Super Dewey.
I think there's a reason this one was the least successful. I think there was a reason this killed the franchise. And in a lot of ways, people accuse the third one of pretty much doing that too. And fair enough, but I think this one really just didn't do it for me. And I think that it doesn't belong with the other three. That was a perfect trilogy. And this fourth movie, to me, significantly brought it down. So it's interesting to me to hear other people have a different view and have it as their second best movie. I don't think it's anywhere close to the first three movies. Anywhere close. So Kevin Williamson was hardly a part of this movie, and it shows. And Wes Craven was getting a little bit, you know,
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
It didn't do it for me. So like I hate that the screen time gave away the killer to me. And if you go back and watch the fourth one, you'll really notice like it's like she's supposed to be like the new Sydney, but she's not getting new Sydney time on screen. What's going on here? They got, you know, and I'm like, oh, she was the killer. Like, and it was the only movie where I predicted one of the killers. So you know, and I do think it was cool that it was a young female killer. I find in a lot of horror movies that scare me, it's female killers that happen to be the killers and really scare me. There's something that extra freaks me out in my psyche about that. So as opposed to like a Jason has never really scared me compared to when it was like Jason's mom. I thought that was scary. Things like that. It's like all these different circumstances, but yeah, it just didn't do it for me. I don't like the aesthetic of how it's shot. It looks fake and like a TV movie. Like, and I think maybe they were thinking about probably just dumping it on MTV. and then they thought, let's get a little bit of cash here. And it was the least successful financially, and that doesn't always dictate the worst, but I think in this case it did. And it just didn't take the risks that I wanted to take as a Scream movie, coming back after 10 years off or however long it was from the third movie. So I was expecting more for it coming back, and I was disappointed. And I've gone back and rewatched it and never been more than whelmed by it. So that's why I gave it a C. So like I said,
that's still good. I mean, it's not terrible.
I mean, my mom used to tell me, "C's
It's not Poltergeist.
These get degrees.
yeah, C's get the
So
grade."
we gave this movie an overall of a B plus, which I think is a super solid rating. It's probably my third favorite in the series. 2 is my second favorite, and 1 is obviously my first favorite, which is probably the 1 is the first favorite for everybody here. It's just how we arrange the sequels. Overall, guys, I want to just touch on this briefly. Just give me your overall, and then I'll come in last, overall viewpoints of the entire franchise. Let's start. I'll go straight in order, going this way and then going down and then hitting Aaron. Matt, overall thoughts. Just give me something brief on a brief synopsis of what you think the series is and what you liked about the series.
It's a character study on horror movies. It takes what we as fans have seen with horror movies and point out to each other in our little circles and makes it mainstream. The first one, it takes the killer, who is normally back then was somebody walking behind you or came out of nowhere and killed you. The second one brought in a twist. It was his mom. The third one connected her mom. The fourth one was somebody who wanted the limelight. So it takes the rules of looking at movies. You know, the first one's always the best. The second one tries to one-up it. The third one tries to screw with the first one. And the reboot isn't always the best or you see coming. So it just takes movies and makes our rules that we see as film fans mainstream. And rest in peace, Randy.
Rest in peace, Randy. Kelsey, your 2019 eyes. Give me some overview of what the entire series meant to you, and some thoughts. You know, because I know that you, like I said, 2 weeks ago you saw the series. It's still fresh in your mind. Give me some thoughts.
All right. Well, my opinion, especially, I developed this opinion early on in the first movie when I was watching it, and it just confirmed it to me over and over and over again, is Scream is in on the joke. These are things we have made side comments like, oh, this is going to happen. They know that we know that. They're in on the joke, and they're like, we get it. We're going to still do it for you, but just know that we know that you, I don't know, it just feels like the people who created it are one of us. They watch horror movies. They love movies. And they get what we want to see in a movie and what we like about them and what we don't like about them, and still manage to still do some of those things we don't necessarily like about them, but make it in a way where it's enjoyable and funny and entertaining. I'm very limited on my horror movie knowledge. That's one reason I did the binge. I'm trying to catch up on these movies. But I think Scream is definitely a good idea to be one of the first ones because it's gotten me excited to see the movies that it's working off of. So I don't know. Not just a horror franchise, as a franchise itself, I think not only did it change film, but it changed the audience and our expectations of film as well. And so I think it's very impactful and fun, and I can't wait to rewatch it all over again and see what I missed and kind of just like you said, like in the first one, go back and look at the characters and be like, now knowing what I know, what do I see? So it's a great franchise. It's right now probably one of my favorite franchises because it's as consistent as any other franchise I've seen. And I liked it. It's fun. I enjoyed it.
All right. I knew there was a reason why I liked you, Kelsey. So,
I'm glad there's at least one.
so, Aaron, down below me, overall thoughts on the franchise. What did you think? I know that you rated most of them pretty high. Give me your overall thoughts.
Yeah. Honestly, what's been said here is pretty spot on. I don't need to really touch on those aspects. These movies really have aged incredibly well, which is really fortunate to say. And I think that when they came into the game, it was at a time that the genre really needed that revitalization. It's continued to remain relevant, and yeah, I think that even at its worst, it's still a damn good movie. So it's made me realize being on today for the first time. Thank you for having me on. First of all, I've really had a great time. Sorry for derailing this conversation as much as
No,
I
it's
have,
quite
but
all right. I enjoy it.
It's part of
Yeah,
the fun.
yeah, exactly. So I'm looking forward to being back on to talk about the Saw movies. There'll be some fucked up shit coming up in that, so don't worry. Because I have a weird attraction to those movies too. So I'll just leave it at that. But with the Scream movies, all the Scream movies really are great to watch at this time, or like really any time of the year, and they're just gonna make you a better horror fan. So, what Kelsey said about that she was glad, I'm glad that she started there too, because taking off from there, they may not all be as consistent and great, but it's a really great foundation. So, talking about it has just made me want to go back and rewatch all of them basically again, especially 3. I'm going to turn on 3 tonight, actually. And just
Right on Netflix.
Yeah, exactly. It's right on Netflix. And just enjoy watching it once again. These are movies that I talked about for 2 hours just now. So and
Yeah.
I had a great time talking about them with everybody here. I think hearing your guys' thoughts on these, just the different ways that we take in this art medium that is movies. It's a awesome medium, and if you just want to enjoy them on the surface level as just dumb slasher movies, they work that way, and that is just like so. It's how deep you want to look into it that affects your experience, and so. Great. I had a great time tonight. So either way, all the movies are great except for 4. Pretty average. If I could re-rate it, I'd probably give it a C- just out of spite now. But I'll stick with my C. So
All right. Well, I will wrap us up here. I had a blast talking to each one of you about this franchise. That's what this is about. It's a roundtable discussion on one of my favorite genres, which is horror. I enjoy talking about this because it's so much more than just blood and guts that people just view it as, or jump scares. It's an actual character study on the human psyche. A lot of people don't realize that when they watch horror movies, they're like, oh, it's just a good jump scare. And then you watch an A24 movie and realize that you're watching horror that's actually about a human study, and it's fucked up. Midsummer was fucked up.
my favorite movie of the year.
Oh, it was so good. It was so good. I'm in a movie trivia team that's called Midsummer Nightmare. So yeah, that's pretty fun. But this series overall drew me into horror. It was my the miniseries was my starting jump off point to horror, and this was me established that I became a horror fan. I watched movies like Paperboy and Leprechaun before I watched this movie, but then I truly enjoyed this movie as a 9-year-old sitting in a theater, in a dark theater, watching a scary movie and being like, that is an awesome movie. Each one of these movies will always be on my top when it comes to horror movies because it's my favorite franchise. There isn't many franchises that top this as a whole franchise. Movies wise, there's a couple of horror movies that do top the Scream movies, but overall, franchise wise, it's one of my favorites. It's the most consistent. And that's what I will say about that. And what we did was we rated overall the entire series, the entire franchise, and we gave it a B+. That was all the grades added up and divided by 4 and gave us this average of a B+. Well, guys, as always, it has been Maddie G, Kelsey, and Aaron, and myself, Doug. You survived another episode of Bloody Manor. I hope you guys survive next time. See you soon. And now we wait for the broadcast to end.